Okay, I think we are live. So, hey, it's Shai Sarai, and welcome to another live. This one is a little spur of the moment. I was actually going to go live earlier this week, but work was just a little too hectic. And I'm kind of glad I didn't because there was a hateful person that I was going to get a lot of my time and energy. And now that a few days have passed, I kind of see him for the inconsequential arrangement of atoms he is. However, as a direct result of his actions, 4 of my 6 live streams are deleted. So here we are with a fresh live and a fresh approach. I have come across a number of new ideas, and one of them is reading Wattpad stories. So, if you've never heard of Wattpad, don't worry. And I'm saying what? Oh my goodness. Wattpad stories. I hadn't either. But I glanced over the number one story and it does look interesting. Plus, I just love reading. So, let's give it a try. This story is called Captive of the Sea by TheAllieL. And warning, I haven't read this story before, but I can already tell it's going to be scary. So if you don't like horror, you may want to leave now. I'll link it down in the description. And let's see, let's get some imagery going. We'll pop that into the live. We will put up our banner. And then finally, maybe just a little bit of background music. And okay, I think we might be all set. If you're watching this live or maybe even on the replay, if you have any feedback, definitely let me know, especially if there's anything with the audio or video. But in the meantime, we're going to get right into it. Okay, so let's see. So I am reading Captive of the Sea by TheAllieL on Wattpad.com. And it starts off like this. The sun blazes down on the small island of San Mahina, the only relief from the sweltering heat being the ocean breeze blowing in from the Atlantic and the small amount of shade offered by the numerous palm trees. White, sandy beaches wrap around the small island, with the occasional rocks and boulders splattered across the shoreline. San Marina is lunar-shaped. And if you didn't catch that, I think it's saying it's shaped like the moon. So the north side of the island, facing the vast Atlantic Ocean, large waves crashing against the shore. The south side of the island is more lagoon-like, with deep blue waters often patrolled by fishermen and divers. Not far from the British Virgin Islands, San Mahina's climate is very tropical. Various warm weather fruits are harvested from the island's many acres of farmland, sustaining the island's economy. In the beginning, in the early 20th century, the island boomed with tourists. People would come from all over to see San Mahina's crystal blue waters and white sands. But its cerulean depths that seem so beautiful and mesmerizing could be quite deceiving. In 1927, a 64-year-old man went fishing on the south side of the island. The man went missing for 2 days before he washed ashore, but a victim of drowning he was not. Portions of his body, not from the teeth of a shark, but skillfully done by the hand of a monster. Oh my gosh, this is going to be scary. And just a quick little pause in the story if you guys don't mind. This is my first time doing this, so please forgive any type of reading mistakes. I can read, I promise. Okay, back to the story. Later, in 1936, 2 young men went swimming on the west corner of the island. One of the men watched as his companion was dragged into the water by his ankles, never to be seen again. The witness could only describe the monster as just being a shadow in the waves. In 1942, a woman drowned in front of her newly wedded husband. In 1954, A local man was pulled out of his boat only to wash up on shore without any arms. 1963 had 2 swimmers dead within 6 months. The number of attacks just kept rising, and the island's inhabitants began to decline. By the 1990s, San Mahina was nearly abandoned, the only residents being the locals and the occasional reenter. No longer were the days of happy vacations and sunny retreats. The once crystalline blue water would forever be read in the haunted minds of those who witnessed the island's horrors. And so, the palm trees continued to sway in false security, the island forever haunted by its cerulean debts. There was never any survivors of the attacks, but there were witnesses, and they all described the monster as the same, a shadow in the sea. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going to continue to the next part. On one of San Mahina's many avenues, in front of a small booth, under the awning, away from the sun, stands a young woman. She is clad in ripped shorts and a thin tank top over a maroon swimsuit. Her thick blonde hair is pulled back into a loose ponytail, a few strands sticking to her sweaty forehead. She meanders through the stand's products, her gaze falling on a basket of mangoes. Her long fingers graze over the fruits, swatting the occasional bug. Her gray eyes light up, signaling with her hand for the seller. Oh, there's one person in here. Oh my gosh. It felt better when it was just me. Okay, so the short man shuffles over, his deeply tanned skin proving he is a local. He smiles at the young woman, wrinkles forming around his eyes. "Would you like to check out, miss?" he asks in an accent audible in his words. "Yes, sir," she says. She replies politely, a small smile gracing her thin lips. "These 2 mangoes," she said, handing the man the fruits. She follows the man as he leads her to a table with a cash register. The man scrutinizes her curiously, his eyebrows furrowing. "You're not from here, are you?" he asks, no doubt noticing her pale skin and blonde hair from a climate much cooler than the island. "No, sir. I'm on vacation with my family," she replies, handing him the appropriate cash. The man frowns. "We don't get many tourists around here anymore." "It's a shame, isn't it? This place is beautiful," the girl replies airily, smiling at the sight of a small bird flying past. "You mean to say you don't know?" he asks. "I don't follow, sir." The older fellow lowers his voice, gesturing her to incline her ear. The girl obliges, though not without much wary hesitance. "There are legends, miss. Stories." "What kind of stories?" she questions. "Drownings, unexplainable disappearances," he murmurs. "You ask why no one comes here. Aye, for good reason they don't. No one goes in those waters and comes back alive." "Sir, I'm sorry, but..." The man shakes his head frantically. No, miss. Don't go in the water, miss. Dangerous things swim in those waters." "Don't listen to him. He's a crazy old man," a woman from a neighboring stand says, scrutinizing the man with her nose upturned. Disregarding the woman's cruel remark and feeling the need to spare the man's feelings, she asks, "What dangerous things?" The man looks both ways, shooting the other woman a dark look, before turning his gaze to the girl. "There are many tales and legends of what could be in those waters. No one knows for sure, but I can tell you what I believe," the man whispers, his gaze on the passing people. Oh my gosh. I definitely have to get better at this. If this is a popular type of live stream. Reading out loud is very different from reading in your head, I'm just saying. Okay, we're moving on to the next chapter. Callie stirs in her sleep as a gentle breeze caresses her exposed skin from the open window. A sigh leaves her lips as she slowly comes to consciousness. She blearily wipes her blonde hair out of her eyes and pulls herself into a sitting position. Her gaze travels to an open window, a smile twisting up her lips at the sight before her. Beyond the porch, outside her window, lay the rolling dunes. Sea oats sway as the breeze blows down the deserted beach. Crystal blue waves crash against the shore as pelicans swoop down from above, easily catching fish in their eager beaks. She also notices that the breeze is blowing much stronger than it normally does along the dark strip of clouds on the horizon. Deciding it's probably time to get up as it's almost 8 o'clock, Callie stands from her reclined position, stretching her arms over her head as she does so. She pads into her in-suite, humming a tune under her breath as she prepares herself a shower. She's been looking forward to this day since they first planned the trip. Today was today was to be spent sailing on the south side of the island. Hey Jeremiah, just talking to people in the live chat. Her parents had already rented a small boat for them to use on their aquatic escapade, and Callie can be more excited to go out on the open ocean. Although with the strength of the wind and the ominous clouds in the distance, perhaps they may not go. A small voice in the back of her head quietly whispered of the possible dangers of the water, urging her to remember the fear-stricken face of the village men. Wouldn't it be silly to press her luck? Maybe it isn't a mermaid that is stalking the island, but there is something. Callie brushes the voice aside. This is her day of fun, and nothing is going to stop her from enjoying herself, not even a storm or the rumor of a flesh-eating monster. She goes about her normal morning routine, still humming the same tune. Music is a big part of Callie's life, as she spends most of her time either singing or playing her ukulele, though she never sings for others besides Ethan. Callie is far too afraid to sing to anyone else, but yes, she has a lovely voice. She wants to write her own songs, but has never had the imagination to do so, preferring to just sing along to the artists whose songs play through the earbuds that are nearly constantly in her ears. After her shower, she slips on a navy blue swimsuit that complements her pale complexion. It was just a simple suit with thin straps that crisscrossed over her back and attached to the screens in the back, which were tied neatly into a bow. This is getting boring, huh? It's only like 13 minutes in and I'm just kind of bored. I'm just gonna scroll through a little bit. Because this is all a little bit of trial and error. Okay, so Callie is meeting her little brother, who is wearing a muscle shirt with minions on it, apparently. Her and her brother are talking, and then the dad, and they eventually decide to go out on the ocean. Sorry, this is getting kind of boring. I'm gonna spare you guys. Okay, I'm browsing through it. They're on the boat and they're in a storm. Callie's talking about what a bad idea it is. She is helping her little brother keep warm. She's got a nagging thought from the village men who told her about the people. And now they're looking for life jackets, so I think they're getting scared. Okay, so, okay, so now they have fallen into the water. I think this is a good place to start reading. Okay, so the poor things. Okay, so pretty much what happened after Callie bought those mangoes from the dude at the shop. She went home, she woke up, she hung out with her brother. Her parents decided to take them out on the sea, even though there was a storm. Last thing was she heard her dad asking if there were life jackets. And now we're into the second, now we're into the next chapter. Pain, cold, wet. Those were the only things Callie's half-conscious mind were able to register. Panic settles in her like a spirit possessing her body, its ice-cold fingers wrapping around her spine. Callie forces her eyelids open, her eyes widening. Multiple cuts stare back at her like spears ready to pierce her soft flesh. Harsh coughs suddenly rattle her weak frame. She doubles over, seawater dripping down her chin as it's forced its way out of her lungs. Her ribs feel like knives are being stabbed into them with each shuddering cough. She bites her tongue to keep from crying out. As the coughs finally come to a stop, Callie takes in a shuddering breath. She hesitantly looks down at her abdomen to see the damage done to her during the storm. Her tank top is ripped to shreds, blood and sand making the shirt's original color hardly identifiable. Blood, so much blood. With shaking hands, she lifts the hem of her shirt, a soft cry escaping her lips as she peels it off her skin. The soft skin of her stomach is littered with cuts and bruises. One slash goes all the way from underneath her left breast, slowly dragging across her stomach in a jagged line, all the way to the crest of her right hip. The cuts stretch and pull with every move she makes, the sand in her wounds grinding into open wounds. She's vaguely aware of a similar sting on her back. Her gaze travels down her bare legs to see they're in similar shape, if not worse. One cut drags down the outside of her right thigh, roughly 9 inches long. Other cuts litter her legs in all different directions, some deep, others shallow scrapes. A dull ache in her hand causes her gaze to drift to her arms. Judging by the immobility of the ring and middle fingers on her left hand, Callie deduces the fingers are broken. Her arms looking much like the rest of her body, her right shoulder stiff and aching, no doubt having been wrenched in an odd direction during the storm. Too strained to remain seating, Callie flops onto her back, her body crying out in pain as her tender spine meets hard ground. The ache in her ribs intensifies, and Callie realizes she's probably broken a rib or two. She's in too much pain and too scared to feel and see if she's all right. Tears roll down her cheeks and into her hair as she stares up at the skies before her. She has no idea where she is. She has no idea how she got there, and above all else, she has no idea how she's still alive. By all accounts, she should be dead, just floating meat in an endless ocean, her body no doubt ripped apart by sharks, or being ripped apart by the very creature that took her. A shiver runs down her spine as she recalls the image. Pale skin, obsidian eyes, long claws, sharp teeth, a tail. She can remember screaming. She was afraid, so afraid. Callie wonders why, of all people, why take her? It hadn't even glanced at the rest of her family, seeming to only want her. She was glad of that, really. She couldn't imagine having to see her brother taken by the monster. She wonders how they're taking her absence. Do they think she's dead? Are they dead? Tears well in her eyes as she considers the possibility she is survived somehow, but did they? Callie lays on her back, softly crying as the trauma sets in. She's alive yet alone, and with no way of knowing if the rest of her family even survived. She whimpers as she struggles to raise her hand high enough to wipe her tears. The cuts stinging and joints aching. No, she can't just lay here like this. If her family really is dead, there's nothing she can do about it. She will assume they've safely arrived back at the island. If she is to survive, she has to do something about her current situation. With that resolve, Callie forces herself into a seating position. Trying her best to ignore the pain in her body, she adjusted her gaze to the cave around her. The cave is probably 12 feet high, but just 15 feet in width. The cave mouth opens to the sea, the entire cave submerged under the water, except for the small area Callie is in, at the back of the cave. The dry part where she sits is basically a half moon shape that's about 10 feet from the water's edge to the back of the cave. The water rises up to her like a miniature beach. Rocks and boulders rise from the water and litter the beach where Callie sits. Through the cave's mouth, she can see the outside rain cascading down almost violently. It must not have been long then since she blacked out. It's getting darker though. Eyeing the water wearily, Callie decides it's the only way to cleanse her wounds. She bites her lip in trepidation. She has no idea if the creature is still there or even if there are other creatures that could reach her if she were to get in the water. Not only that, but there's no way she could defend herself in her current state. At this rate, she won't even be able to swim out of the cave, let alone fight an underwater creature. I have to do it, Callie says aloud, almost as if hearing her own words will give her more courage. Whatever it takes to survive, right? With that, Callie begins to drag herself into the water. She starts by swinging her legs in front of her and dipping her feet into the dark water. With the little light she can barely see, she plants her hands by her hips and uses what little arm strength she has to raise her pelvis off the ground and slide forward. Scooting her feet forward out, she repeats the action, her feet now submerged in water up to her knees. A cry sounds from her throat as she forces her body further all the way until the water is just under her armpits. She's afraid to go any further. Callie nearly passes out, her eyelids blinking rapidly in an effort to keep herself conscious. As the dizziness passes, she sets about gently rinsing her injuries. Tears spring into her eyes as the sand scrapes her skin as she brushes it away from her body with shaking hands. She carefully removes her tattered tank top and shorts, leaving her in the navy blue swimsuit. She gently squeezes the water from the fabric before using it as a cloth to clean the rest of her body. Once the majority of the blood and the sand are gone, Callie uses the same actions to get back out of the water. Callie tries to take a mental checklist of her body's capabilities. First, standing up. She tries to use a nearby boulder to steady herself, but the pain is so intense she nearly collapses. Callie forces herself to rise from her knees, her muscles screaming. She keeps going, knowing that if she loses the willpower to stand, she'll never make it out alive. She finally succeeds in remaining standing. Check. Next up, walking. Callie takes a deep breath, willing herself not to succumb to pain. Mentally singing Seven Nation Army, Callie takes her first step. The bottoms of her bare feet sting as she steps on the tiny rocks that litter the sand. Her steps are wobbly and her right hip is killing her, but she's successful. Walking, check. A tiny smile lifts the corner of her lips as her hands press into the cave's wall. She's crossed all 10 feet without falling. Not a huge feat, but to her, it's amazing. Using the wall, she lowers herself to sit. Watching the rain outside, her eyelids slowly droop. However she got here, she's glad it's here and not out in the rain. All right, let's go to the next part. It's finally kind of getting interesting. Let's see. All right. Callie is awoken from her slumber by a low grumbling in her stomach. Hunger. It's quite obvious, right? She's probably too stunned to realize it from the shock of last night, but she hasn't eaten for several hours now. She leans forward and notices that the rain has stopped. The sun is bright and shining, reflecting off the water. Looking around the cave, she realized not only is there no food, but there is no water, no fire. The most she can go without water is roughly 3 days, guessing it's been about 16 to 20 hours since she last ate or drank anything, which was breakfast before the boat trip. Callie decides she has about 2 days before she needs water, and she has about a week before she'll die of starvation. Little Sarai cliff note, you can definitely go more than a week without food. It could be argued that she needed to start looking for resources now, but her current state could lead her to waste more calories and become more fatigued than if she were to wait a day. She looks around her surroundings, wondering what to do next. Little by little, she picks up the rocks and tosses them aside. As she slowly clears the area of rocks, she lays down in the cleared area to fall asleep. Well, that was uneventful. Okay, so now it looks like we are back to land. The policeman sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose as he continues the trying task of consoling the grieving family before him. "I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do at this point," he says, bringing his hands down and collapsing them in front of him on his desk. "We understand that your daughter Callie has drowned, and we're doing all we can to find her, but for the last time, Officer Warren, my daughter did not drown." The woman before him sees, tears welling in her eyes. From grief or frustration, he's not sure. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but what you're telling me simply isn't possible. There's no such thing as a creature half fish, half man." "Well, then how come we saw it with our own eyes?" her husband says. "That thing clawed up the side of the boat and took my daughter out of my own hands." The startling truth is, they weren't the first to say this. Officer Warren has, in fact, heard of multiple accounts like this, but there has never been any proof. He remembers looking at the boat the family washed ashore. There were clear claw marks etched into the boat's hull. What on earth could have caused that? There's simply no logical explanation. Officer Warren comes back from his thoughts and gulps. There is an explanation, but it's in no way logical, in no way real. His gaze settles on the distraught husband and wife sitting in front of him, before sliding to beyond the glass door where their son sits cross-legged against the wall. The little boy's shoulders are slumped, tear stains clear on his pale cheeks. Warren can't imagine what this boy must be going through, having seen his sister drowned right before his very eyes. Warren looks back at the grieving couple and says, "I'll see what I can do." Going back to Callie in her cave in the ocean, Callie has decided that she will never eat a raw fish again without first getting rid of the scales. When she ate the first fish, scales got all in her mouth and were almost crunchy and hard to spit out. That was 2 days ago. Once a day, for the last 2 days, a fish has showed up in the cave. She only saw the creature deliver her food once. The other time she was asleep. She stares down at the newest fish. 2 things about it are different. It is slightly bigger, with a black stripe from its tail to head, and there's a bite taken out of it. Normally, this wouldn't deter her from eating it, but she's practically sick with thirst. She lays the fish aside, the thought of the water making her dry throat ache even more. She's happy for the food, yes, but what is food without drink? She was even so desperate for water that she tried licking the water off the cave's walls, but It was salty. Going on to the next part. These Wattpad stories are longer than I expected. Okay, here we are. Now we're taking things from the perspective of the creature who apparently goes about kidnapping girls. The creature begins its ascent from the ocean's floor, the medicinal seaweed held loosely in his hand. If he wants the human girls to survive, it seems like he'll have to do a bit of work. Aside from being vile, vicious creatures, he also realizes humans are very needy. He knew the human would need food to survive, so he provided it. But what else did she need? Water, she had said, fruit, anything. His kind did not require such things. Such puny creatures. They couldn't even drink from the ocean. It was indeed water last time he checked. And so he set about tending to her needs, all the while wondering why he didn't kill her when he had the chance. He isn't sure why he didn't eat her. Yes, eat her, as that's what his kind tend to do with humans. He had been watching her from the water for quite some time before the storm. One could say he was stalking her, and indeed he was, with every intention of tasting her human flesh. It was only what she deserved, after all. Humans were quite the delicacy among his kind. He had only tasted one human before. He did not regret tearing into the human's flesh with his teeth while it was still alive and screaming. The foul creature deserved everything it got. And yet he still did not kill the girl. Why? He was not sure. She was innocent, kind, caring, everything he wanted for the purpose she was to serve, and yet he couldn't go on with his plan. When he took her that day during the storm, he thought it was to devour her like he did the man, but he couldn't. Once he held her fragile body in his arms, once her legs had ceased their kicking, her lungs filled with water, he found himself incapable of harming her. No, he had tried to tell himself, humans are foul, vile, disgusting, and yet he could not make his claws sink into her flesh. This is a really weird story. Oh my gosh. Okay. So instead, he found himself swimming to the surface, holding her limp body above the water. He then took her back to the cave she was in now. There, he practically squeezed the water out of her lungs, nearly forcing life back into her body. And there he left her. He didn't think she would survive, but life can surprise us sometimes. She was a little more beat up by the storm than he had originally thought, and to top it off, her wounds became infected. Humans, so weak. He breaches the surface. His breathing patterns switch from his gills to his nose. He swims across the cage, the seaweed still in his grasp. His kind has used its healing powers for centuries. His mother had told him. He wonders if it will work on the human. It's high tide now, making her sleeping form accessible from the water. He might have to slither forwards on his belly a few feet to reach her, but he can manage that with ease. As the water shallows, he pulls himself with his hands, careful not to make too much sound that would awake the sleeping girl. Once as far as he can go, he tosses the seaweed on the bank before dragging himself onto the sand. Subconsciously, he's glad that she's removed all the sharp stones. He watches her curiously. His kind do not sleep well. They can, but that's only during specific times. He watches her sleep, shuddering on the exhales, her brow slightly furrowed, showing that she is indeed in pain. Her lips purple-blue color. Deciding that he wouldn't stare any longer, he begins his work wrapping her wounds with the medicinal seaweed. He really does not know why he's doing this. Maybe he might feel bad about purposely crashing her boat, but then again, maybe not. Maybe subconsciously he wishes to make his food more healthy before he consumes it. Yes, that's more likely. Callie awoke by something wet and sticky wrapping around her leg. Startled, her eyes fly open. He looms over her, a passive expression on his face. A scream locks in her throat and she finds herself frozen, unable to flee. Don't, he warns her sternly. Despite his warning, she begins to struggle. Callie screams, only to be cut off by one of his massive hands clapping over her mouth. He easily catches one of her wrists with his other hands and pins it to her chest. The added weight on her lungs causes her to wheeze and her ribs to grind painfully against each other. I said, don't. He looks up at him. Callie looks up at him with fear in her eyes. Is he finally about to finish her off? If so, what's he waiting for? Clearly her strength is no match for his. Stop it while I fix you. One move and I might just kill you, he says, grumbling over other words under his breath in another language. Callie ceases all movements. She watches as the creature lay awkwardly on its side, his long black tail stretched out beside him and curled tightly. Slowly, he lets her hands and mouth free, eyeing her with a warning look. He reaches beside him and picks up a long, slimy black weed from the sand. It jiggles and leaves a dark-colored slime in its wake, its foul smell permeating the air around them. Okay. And then what happens next? All right, sorry, my internet's a little slow. Okay, so we've moved on. It's been 5 days since the creature wrapped her wounds with the seaweed. 5 days adding up to nearly more than a week spent in the cave. 5 days without any progress towards returning home. 5 days of grief for her family. To Callie, it felt like 5 weeks. Her days have become rather monotonous, consisting of a repetitive schedule that grows less appealing by the hour. Not that it was even appealing to begin with. First, she eats the fish that is delivered while she sleeps. Second, she walks around her cave to test her strength and massage her joints. Third, she waits for the creature to return with fruit. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. Lastly, she uses her quote-unquote bathroom before laying down against the back of the cave to sleep, and then repeat. She's surprised at how easily she's gotten used to eating the raw fish. She would normally gag at the thought, but lately she's been so hungry that she nearly craves her daily fish, with only being fed once a day. Callie sighs. It's very silent in the cave, the only sounds being the ocean waves outside her little home and the sound of her breathing. The creature never speaks unless it's a one-word command, and she's too afraid to talk to him. A part of her wishes he would speak more. What would he say? What is he like? She can think of loads of things she would ask him, but at the same time, her fear holds her mouth shut. Perhaps staying quiet is safer anyway. Jeez, this is quite long. Let's see what happens next. Water, choking, screaming, pain. Callie scrunches up against the wall, her body folding in on itself as fear wraps around her like a constricting snake. Whimpers escape her lips as she tries desperately to block the images from her mind, images that are becoming all too real again. Her once deep breaths become useless pants as panic sets in. She squeezes her eyes shut and balls her fingers into a fist. Not again, not again. Her chest aches as she fails to take deep breaths, her head throbbing and her body feeling as if the very walls were holding her down and trapping her in a hell of their own. She might be able to swim if the water were calm, but no, not this. She would die, impaled on the rocks long before she made it to the cave's mouth, let alone into the storm. The water steadily rises, the cool seawater lapping against her back and submerging her ankles. There's no dry land now. A scream escapes her lips as a bolt of lightning crackles through the night, the flash alighting the horror scene before her. Up the waters rise, like demons reaching to grab her and take her into their haunted depths. Callie's entire body shakes and shivers, her breathing erratic and her heart thumping wildly in her chest. Her nails dig into the stone wall, her forehead resting against the wet stone. A giant splash washes over her, soaking Callie all the way to the bones. Broken sobs choke forth from her heaving chest as fear and desperation take over. The dark sea nearly has her now. It will take her under, swallow her whole. Callie is awoken by something skittering over her hand. Oh, was that all a dream? Seriously? Oh my gosh. Really? I thought the water had came into the cave. It was just a dream. Okay, so she lays on a white sandy beach, the waves rolling onto the shore before her. The sun beats heavily down upon her skin and she seals her eyes from the rays. I'm finally free, she whispered to herself. No cave, no cold nights, no musty smell. I'm finally free. After many minutes spent lying in the sand, Callie decides to explore. She pulls herself into seated position, her sore body aching from some areas, especially the raw ones where the sand gave her burns. She hobbles to the water, removing the sand from her skin. She happily hums to herself. Her thoughts drift back to the previous night. She can't seem to comprehend the creature's actions. He kidnapped her only to heal her and save her life. She can't help but think, is he really a monster? Maybe she was wrong about him. Maybe he isn't some murderous monster, but then again, why would he attack her in the first place? Callie comes to the confusion that is rather unfortunate. The only way she'll get answers is if she were to ask the creature himself. The island is small, Callie discovers. It's only about 2 or 3 acres in size and circular in shape. Most of the island is just long flats of sand, but the very center has a few palms and some exotic-looking bushes. Too bad all the plants are too pokey and sharp to use as bedding or suitable shelter. They should make good tinder, though. Okay, we're coming up on the 42-minute mark. Let's see how much longer this story is. Just one little pause. Wow. This is a lot longer. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I think I'll have to find, if I do continue reading if I do continue reading Wattpad or Wattpad stories, very weird to say Wattpad, I'll definitely have to read them in advance and make sure they're shorter. I'm sorry this live is kind of a mess, but what are you gonna do? It's the first live, so it looks like, just so you guys have closure, as I'm going through, it looks like she and the merman fell in love, but obviously Callie can't live in the water. She's a woman, she's a person. So she went, and lived like a normal life, but she never met any other guy. It looks like somehow her and the merman had a kid or something, but it's called Calliope, I guess. But it's like a human kid. And yeah, I think we can end it there. Long story short, Captive of the Sea by TheAllieL, a merman kidnaps a girl and they fall in love. Somehow he gets her pregnant, and looks like she still visits the sea where the merman is, but she of course goes back to live on land because she is not a mermaid. And I think that's the end. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so thank you so much if you have put up with my first attempt at reading Wattpad stories. I don't know if I'll even keep this up because I can't even seem to say Wattpad, but yeah. Gotta try a couple of different things out since I can't do my short switch size Sarai for the time being. So yeah, I think I'll stop rambling now. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will talk to you soon.